Good morning. It is the DFS early bird. Dave Lochran, Adam Shar, breaking down a 7-game basketball slate, taking you out of the weekend into the new week. It is December. That's right, December 3rd. Maybe the 2nd still, if you're listening right as this thing drops. But generally speaking, it'll be Monday morning when you're listening to the subtle sounds of my voice. Not subtle at all. Adam's might be a bit more subtle than mine is. But, Adam, we've got 7 games here. At the top of the position, Anthony Davis, second of a back-to-back. You got old Russell Westbrook coming off a near triple-double. Would have been his 3rd straight. Came 1 rebound shy in that game. Blowout win over Atlanta. James Harden. You've got Kevin Durant. You've got Kawhi Leonard. You've got a healthy Stephen Curry. You've got John Wall, Andre Drummond, and Karl Anthony Towns. That's on DraftKings. All 9 of them above $9,000 on a 7-game slate.
Yeah, pretty interesting slate. I mean, we got all those guys. You got Washington at the Knicks, where Washington hopefully won't get blown out, so you can try and guess between whatever the hell is going to go on between those 2 rotations. It's a pretty interesting one.
It is. And Washington's defense has just gotten so bad to a point where you just play anybody against. I mean, the Philadelphia 76ers, we talk about it a lot. Yeah, they don't blow teams out all that often. Said that about the Knicks. They go and they trash the Knicks. And then the next day or 2 days later, they go in and they just thrash Washington too. I mean, that game wasn't even competitive, man. It was terrible. Brad Beal gets a couple quick early fouls. John Wall shoots 4 for 15. It was brutal. And the worst part about that was I had a lot of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, both of whom were on pace for like 70 fantasy points. Yep. They didn't play past midway through the 3rd quarter, so that was pretty fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of Embiid, and I saw he had 45 fantasy points at like halftime.
Yeah,
24
minutes.
Yeah.
24 minutes. So
so I mean, like Cantor should probably like if you're looking at Vegas props or you're playing on Thrive, and the over/under is less than 100 rebounds for Enes Cantor, you should probably take the over.
Probably.
And I'm only like half joking.
I know. Now, if Cantor has a 2020 game here, I don't think anyone would be surprised.
No, not at all. Like, yeah. I mean, obviously 100's joking, but he seriously could go for 2020 in 34 minutes.
No question. And honestly, this could be I'm tired of talking about Trey Burke because he just continues to let me down. And I'm just glad that he's already ruled out for this game.
Right.
He played 1 minute. Go ahead.
No. I told you, like, I took the night off from NBA and I went out and, hung out with some friends, went and grabbed some wine. And I'm like sitting at the bar watching football, drinking wine. And I look and I'm like, oh, Trey Burke's ruled out. I already know that makes tomorrow just like so much easier to talk.
Yeah, it really does. And I'm happy that he's not there. By the way, Tim Hardaway played 47 minutes in that overtime win over a Milwaukee team that's now lost games to the Suns and the Knicks just in the past week. So I don't know, not looking great there, but he played 47 minutes there. So let's go ahead and start with the point guard position. We'll obviously get into Hardaway a little bit later in the show. I don't want to start from the top. I want to talk about quickly this situation with Trey Burke because he's out of the rotation, at least for Monday, which means that you have Emmanuel Mudiay, and then, I mean, True's not really getting much at the 1. You have Frank Ntilikina. Ron Baker played 6 minutes against Philly. He didn't play the last game, so he's not really getting run. But Emmanuel Mudiay played 36 minutes last game, Adam. Frank Ntilikina in that same game played 0 minutes. So it stands to reason that Mudiay could be in for a hefty workload here. The problem is his price tag has come up to $5K on DraftKings.
Right, and it's still kind of a guessing game because Ntilikina still exists, and who knows what the Knicks are going to do.
Yep.
But from the aspect of if we're going to like try and guess what happens here, then Moody is probably too cheap if he's going to play 30-plus minutes. He is someone at least that, for all of his flaws, he can produce. He's not one of those guys that just doesn't produce on a permanent basis. He has massive flaws that lead to him getting benched and losing fantasy points, which is his turnover problem. But he is at least capable of being productive when he's on the floor. So I do like the matchup for him. It's just, if he's going to be super popular, which he probably will be. I mean, obviously we're recording this on Sunday night, so I don't know, but I assume he'll be very popular with Trey Burke out. Just keep in mind that Frank Ntilikina is capable of playing point guard. The Knicks have done whatever they want as far as rotations go, so nobody's safe. But the price tag and the potential workload is clearly too low.
Yeah, it's tough. I guess I'll probably have some. I wish he was still dirt cheap. He's not. But
I wish he was 8K so I didn't have to play him.
Exactly. But I know one thing. I'm Ntilikina, I can't do it. I mean, because he's not even the one thing he does well is defense. Outside of that, he's not a good shooter. He's not even a great facilitator. So what's the point at this rate? I just don't have any interest there, even with Burke. I don't care how cheap he is. What about the top, though? You've got Russell Westbrook. We'll get to Harden at shooting guard. And if you obviously want to talk about priorities here at the top of the position, being that we have so many expensive players, Russell Westbrook at Detroit. That game right now has a 1-point spread. How about that? Oklahoma City favored by 1 point in a 220.5 total game. Stephen Curry against the Atlanta Hawks in Atlanta. They're 10.5-point favorites. This game's got a 232 total. Warriors actually playing down in pace this year. Hawks leading the league in pace. Stephen Curry, though, they said there could be some limits. Yeah, 36 minutes. Big time limit there. So I think he's a bit too cheap in this one, Adam.
Right, and that's where I'm at as well. You know, for Westbrook, I think it's a perfectly fine spot. I don't love it because Detroit's actually been surprisingly good defensively this year. They don't play at a fast pace, which I think we expected, but also they've been reasonably good in terms of defensive rating. Not to say that Russell Westbrook has a bad matchup or anything like that, but it's not like it's a spot where we expect him to just walk over this defense. And you have guys like Curry, as you mentioned, that are too cheap. You have John Wall, who should probably play, 38 minutes in the spot. So Westbrook, if you can get there, then sure. But I don't think I'm going to be forcing him in. Steph Curry, you alluded to the whole thing about him being limited. And when that whole tweet came out about he's not limited, but he won't play his full minutes, I kind of called bullshit on that and said that if the game was close, he was probably going to play his full minutes. And he did. He played 37. I had him projected for 34. He played more than that. But obviously, pace-up game against Atlanta. At Atlanta, who knows if this game's going to stay close. It's obviously a much better Warriors team than Atlanta team, but he's just too cheap for his upside. It's one of the fastest paced teams in the league in Atlanta, and it's a guy in Curry who, if he's making his shots, he's going to shoot every time down the floor, and he's going to get more possessions. So I still love Curry at a reduced price tag.
So do I. And another thing about Curry, the fact that he's 9,500, you're talking about a guy that before he was injured was well above 10K almost every game. He was 9K last game. He didn't pay that price tag off. But like you said, that was a Detroit team that's actually playing good defense at a slow clip. Atlanta leads the league in pace. They lead the league in pace. They don't have anyone capable of guarding him even a little bit here. I mean, you're going to probably see Kent Bazemore for when he's on the court guarding Klay Thompson, Taurean Prince trying to handle Kevin Durant. And who are they going to stick on? Who are they going to stick on Stephen Curry?
Trae Young.
That should go well.
Or, I mean, the worst case for Steph Curry is that they throw Bazemore on him and Klay Thompson scores 100 points. But you have to assume that – and that's the whole thing. This Golden State team is just such a matchup nightmare for Atlanta that Curry's price tag is just too cheap if he's going to get any minutes where Trae Young is actually forced to try and defend him.
For sure. Curry could go nuclear in 30 minutes, by the way, in 3 quarters.
Oh, yeah.
There's no question.
I don't care about the blowout risk in this game because he's cheap enough, and we know Curry can go out there and drop. If this game blows out, there's a very, very, very good chance that Steph Curry is out there challenging Klay Thompson's 3-point record through the third quarter.
Absolutely 100% possible. If he went for 40 and 10 in 3 quarters, nobody would be surprised, especially not us. So right. I'm with you there. Now, what about other guys? John Wall's facing the Knicks in New York. He's 9,300. He's pretty much the same price as Curry. Washington's a 1-point favorite, 228 total. So this game should at least stay close. Drew Holiday's 8,300 in a home tilt with the Clippers. I know we know that game's going to see a lot of scoring. 237.5 total. Both of those teams playing at a top 5 pace this year. Or I'm sorry, no, the Clippers are 8th and the Pelicans are 3rd. So that's an interesting spot for Holiday, an interesting spot for Wall. I think for Wall, it's going to be harder for me to get there because of Curry. But in terms of Drew Holiday, that's a decent price point. What are you doing with the guys like Holiday and Chris Paul against Minnesota and Kyle Lowry against Denver, all of them in that low 8K range?
So one thing to point out for Wall is that Otto Porter's been ruled out. Jeff Green's in. And while obviously they play different positions, Washington is just such a fluid team in terms of they have so many wings that can play so many different positions that when one of these guys is out, it does affect the minutes of everyone else. In Porter's case, it means that if you're trying to get Satoransky more minutes, he can get them at the wing and not in place of John Wall. So, I think that you can project him, especially if you're playing tournaments and you're just trying to see where he could wind up in terms of ceiling. I think projecting John Wall for like 38 minutes is very reasonable. It's a matchup against the Knicks where, depending on who's defending him, it really changes a lot. Like if Mitchell Robinson and Ntilikina are on the floor, it's a tough matchup. If Moutier and Enes Kanter are on the floor, it's not a difficult matchup. So a lot can vary there, but at his price tag, there's still plenty of upside. I agree with you that Curry is just the better play between the two. Drew Holiday at 8,300 is very appealing. I don't like him quite as much now that Tim Frazier's out there picking up all the assists.
For sure.
But still, like you said, a very fast-paced matchup between the Clippers and the Pelicans. So no issue with Holiday at that price tag, especially on this slate where there's not a lot in this range. Like John Wall's, $1,000 more expensive. I like him more than Chris Paul with Harden playing. Similar price tag to D'Angelo Russell in a very slow-paced game against the Cavs. So there's not a lot in that price range, but just keep in mind that he's not, quote-unquote, the point guard anymore.
Yeah, it's a good point. And he hasn't been we've seen it over the past couple of seasons, like with Rondo out there, Drew Holiday's assists declined significantly. And then when he's out there with like Etuan Moore and Wesley Johnson and such, then he was the point guard. But you're right. Tim Frazier's had what? I think, was he have 21 assists over his last 2 games. That does not help whatsoever. Quick hits here real quick. Trae Young against Golden State, yay or nay?
Not in cash for sure. If you're playing like Steph Curry in tournaments or playing someone from Golden State in tournaments and you want to run it back with Atlanta, I think that's fine. But I don't think it's necessary because Atlanta does have enough guys that contribute that could keep it close. If you do play Trae Young, though, I think you want someone from Golden State, whether it's Curry, Thompson, or Durant.
All right, fair enough. I'm with you. Any value here that you're interested in?
Not particularly. Kind of just, Tim Frazier, obviously, he's been playing great. I'm still kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop there just because it's Tim Frazier, and at some point he'll probably stop getting 10 assists a game. But the price tag's fine. Outside of that, though, it's a position where I'm more interested in like the mid-range and upper tier.
I'm with you. Yeah, Curry really just stands out. Maybe Satoransky is a decent play. We'll see. Tim Frazier, the minutes have me a little bit concerned there. I played, played 24 minutes against Miami. They played on Sunday, too. Let me see. I'm curious to know how many minutes Tim Frazier played here. Kind of important. Davis had a monster game. Frazier played 38 minutes. So
yeah. When he's played well, he's played a lot of minutes. He played like 36 or 37 minutes in that game on, I don't remember what night it was, but whatever game he had the double-double.
Against Washington on Wednesday.
Yeah, against Washington in his first start. So the minutes are there if he plays well. I think that with his price tag rising, you have to at least factor in that there's a little bit of risk because if he doesn't play well, there's no reason for the Pels to keep playing him. Like Drew Holiday can run point with no issue.
It's weird though. It's weird though that he had 6 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists against Miami, 24 minutes. He only shot 2 times, but he had an extremely efficient game, 6, 6, and 9 in 24 minutes. So I don't know. I think at this point you have to assume that he's going to get 30-plus minutes though.
Right. Yeah, it's just the rising price tag's the only concern for me. I still think he's a perfectly fine option.
Yeah, in a pace, not a pace-up game for them, but most teams they play, it's an extreme pace down. This isn't. So this game should feature a lot of scoring, and I like that. All right, shooting guard, James Harden against Minnesota. Houston just playing at a crawling pace this year. To me, that is important because this is a team that was a run and gun 3-point shooting, just juggernaut last season. Now they're playing at the second slowest pace in the entire league on the year, Adam. It's really quite crazy. The second slowest in the league. Meanwhile, Minnesota's playing at like the 11th fastest. So it is a pace up spot, but I mean, still, it's crazy to see. Last year this game would have had a 235 total. Now it's at 220. But Harden's still above 11K with Chris Paul back. Are you playing him here?
I just kind of doubt it. It's not that I'm questioning his upside. Even before Paul's injury, since Carmelo left, he had around a 40% usage rate. But it's just that when you look across positions, you have Russell Westbrook in a very nice spot where that he's going to have all the usage in the world and have everything going for him. You have Steph Curry at a cheaper price tag, who on DraftKings, obviously like on FanDuel you're talking across positions, but on DraftKings Steph Curry has shooting guard eligibility. So does Drew Holiday. So you just have that monster upside from cheaper guys. It's not to say that Harden is not going to have a good game, but the big thing for me is he can still take over a game when Chris Paul plays. There's no question about that. He can go out there and be the main offensive option.
It's the assist.
It's the assists and it's the minutes. Like the assists, drop from around 54%. The assist rate drops from 54% to about 36 or 37. But the minutes go from 42 to 44 to like 37 or 38, and That's obviously a huge thing between being one of the best plays on the slate and being a guy who could have a good game, but you could get away from.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. What else here? It's a definitely an interesting position. I think you have to look, whether you like guys like Hardaway or not, Adam, I don't really care. If you're not considering him here, I'm telling you right now that you might want to reevaluate things because he's below 7K. You have no Trey Burke. I'm not saying that makes a huge deal, but what does make a big deal is the fact that Tim Hardaway is facing a Washington team that is hemorrhaging fantasy points to really anyone that wants them. And he's cheap enough to where if he's getting the big minutes in a game that has a 1-point spread, there's no way I can't consider him.
I agree with you completely. Washington plays fast. They don't play defense. And Burke being out, like you said, it's not a huge deal because they don't play on the same line entirely. But when Burke gets hot, he closes with this team. And when Burke's on the floor, he's a guy that's going to shoot. So him being out, it definitely doesn't hurt Hardaway, and it certainly could help him. The price tag's just really appealing. He's one of the only guys on the Knicks this season that's actually had a consistent role where we can trust his minutes, and it's a really nice matchup. So, I have no issue with him, especially, DraftKings. He's shooting guard, small forward eligible, which makes it basically so you can roster him almost anywhere, which is really appealing as well. So, I love Tim Hardaway here. He's what he is from a basketball standpoint, but from DFS at this price tag with how many minutes he's going to play in this matchup, I don't know how you don't like him.
Neither do I. He's cheap enough. The guy's got a near 30% usage rate. I don't know what it's at now, but it's probably still around 30. And if it's not, it's like 28, 29%. I can certainly live with that across 37 minutes. And right now it's at, let's see, he's got a 28.3% usage rate. And he's another guy in close competitive games. Adam, Tim Hardaway's getting you 37, 38, 40 minutes. So you give me 38 minutes against Washington, I'll happily oblige. So let's keep going. We're both on the same page there. I want to know where you stand on the same game. Bradley Beal falls below 8K here. He's 7,900. We already talked about Drew and Stephen Curry, where they have eligibility at both positions. D'Angelo Russell at home against Cleveland has eligibility here. A lot of MPE guys, but of the guys we haven't talked about, Bradley Beal, Andrew Wiggins at 5,500 against Houston, Gary Harris. Anybody interest you here in that below 8K range down to even 5K? We'll get some value in.
Beal really stands out to me. I pulled up, so Popcorn Machine hasn't loaded the games from December 1st yet, which is when the Wizards played the Nets. But I pulled it up on NBA rotations, and I looked because with Beal, the thing I'm trying to pay attention to is how Scott Brooks is running his second half rotations, because for a while now in competitive games, Bradley Beal has played 24 out of 24 minutes in the second half, and Scott Brooks has addressed that. What'd you say?
I said that's amazing.
Right. and it's been multiple games, and Scott Brooks has addressed it and said, I am probably playing Beal too many minutes, but I make sure that during timeouts he sits on the bench the entire time. And that has been his way of making sure that Beal is rested despite playing 44 minutes a night. So I pull up the rotation against the Nets, and I'm like, oh, damn, he sat 3 minutes in the second half. That's not great. And then I looked, and he sat 2 minutes in the first half. So I think we're still looking at 44 minutes from Bradley Beal in a competitive game. Obviously, if you're trying to run any sort of median projection, 44 is a lot of minutes to project for anyone. But if you project him for 40, I think you are probably being very close to the 50th percentile, if not low. And the point there is just that you have a guy who is a high usage guy. He's he's a good scorer. He can take over a game at times, and he should play 40 plus minutes if this game's competitive. Like if you're someone who pulls projections from any site, most places are going to kind of trend toward hedging things because they don't want all of their subs to lose money when they're wrong. And
Right.
So you're going to get projections of Beal being 36 to 38 minutes, and that's fine because that's probably a good median if things go wrong and this game blows out projection. But if you're projecting this game to stay close, there's no reason not to have Bradley Beal at 40 to 42 minutes because that's literally what he's played for the Wizards every single time the game's been competitive for I don't know how long, but for a very long time. And now you have Otto Porter out, so that's one less guy out there. So there's just no reason to question Bradley Beal's minutes here, and you probably should be projecting him for around 40 minutes.
I like that a lot. I'll take 40 minutes from Beal all day. He's been really good this year, and I love the peripherals too. Talk to me about some value here, and then we'll move on. Do you have any interest in the Satoranskis or the Kelly Oubres?
Oubre, yes. Satoransky, not really. For Satoransky, it's just one of those. I love him as an NBA player. As a Wizards fan, he's one of my favorite guys on the team just because he is so productive when he plays. But from a fantasy standpoint, it's like, what are you actually hoping for when Wall and Beal are healthy? Because Porter not playing means more minutes for Satoransky, but it means more minutes alongside Wall and Beal, where Beal's playing 42 minutes and Wall's playing 38 or 40. And so that means less distribution for Satoransky and more just standing in the corner and knocking down a three when John Wall drives and dishes. So the minutes are nice, the price, but I just have trouble actually prioritizing him. Kelly Oubre, on the other hand, we at least at sometimes see him actually take over games. Like it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes he actually is aggressive offensively, and there should be more minutes here for him without Porter. He also is a capable defender, not that there are a ton of people on the Knicks, but I would expect him to see plenty of time against Tim Hardaway here where he has defensive stat upside. So where, Oubre is 4,300 on DraftKings and Satoransky is 3,700, I would prefer Oubre, but, obviously either could have a good game. I just think it's more likely that Oubre does.
All right. I think so too. I'd love Oubre in a game where Beal or Wall wasn't active. Maybe we'll get that because he's just so much different when he actually gets some opportunity. But there's no question that Oubre, as long as he's getting some run, has the ability to put up some numbers. And it's tough to say because they were involved in blowouts in back-to-back games. So I think he gets some run here. And as you mentioned, Otto Porter is already – wait, is Otto Porter already ruled out for Monday?
Yeah, he's out and Green's in.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Green's probable.
Probable, yeah. Okay. Makes sense to me. Let's talk about small forward, Adam. And by the way, we're a little late in this, but I will just point it out now. Injuries that we are tracking, not a ton right now. Otto Porter's out. Trey Burke's out. We already mentioned both of them. Jeff Green, probable. Dwayne Dedman and Jeremy Lin, probable. I think that's it. Kyle Lowry's questionable. That could be a big one. But aside from that, that's about it. And David Nwaba remains out. Joe Harris is also questionable, which could potentially come into play here for a guy like Damari Carroll. Now, it's hard to say. He played 39 minutes against Memphis and 21 minutes against Washington. You really have no idea what Kenny Atkinson's going to do from game to game, Adam. And we're seeing that a whole lot with the wing rotation. There are so many bodies here that he can mess around with, even without Karis LeVert and potentially Joe Harris. There's still Alan Crabb. There's still Damari Carroll. There's still Jared Dudley, who's working in 14 to 20 minutes per game. There's still Dinwiddie, who's going to get minutes alongside Russell. There's still Shabazz Napier. That's just small forward and shooting guard. Like there's a ton of bodies in it. Well, and I guess you could Dudley plays some at the 4, but as you can see, there are a lot of players that make up this rotation, and even Zanan Musa, whatever the hell his name is, played 4 minutes last game.
I mean, yeah. I mean, with the Nets, if you're talking about their wing rotation and trying to like confidently hammer down minutes, good luck. Because on top of all the guys that you just said, you also have Kurix playing minutes. You have Kenneth Faried, who doesn't generally play minutes, but at times will come in, and that could potentially move Damari Carroll from the 4 to the 3. So they have the bodies for Kenny Atkinson to do whatever he wants. I do think it's worth, like from a median standpoint, I think that Damari Carroll in that game against Memphis that went to double overtime, he played 38 minutes. So he played 28 in regulation. I think that was reasonable. I think that if you actually plot out their rotation position by position, you get Damari Carroll around 26 minutes. And that's where I would want to project him here. I think the 21 in that game against Washington, I fully expected Carroll to kind of lose minutes because Alan Crabb had only played 23 the night before. And Damari Carroll is just not a guy that I expected Kenny Atkinson at all to like run out there 38 minutes and then 32 again.
Back.
Right.
Yeah, so, for sure.
Yeah. So I think you should just kind of ignore those 2 games and give Carroll like his 26 minutes and go from there. I
like that. 26 minutes at 3,900 against Cleveland isn't terrible either. I mean, I don't hate that. I really don't. Now we're assuming Joe Harris is out.
Right. Otherwise you're talking like 18.
Right, exactly. So keep that in mind. Let's look at the top of the position. Kevin Durant against Atlanta. Honestly, Adam, Kevin Durant could have a great big game here, no question, but I'd rather just have Curry at $1,400 discount, knowing he could do the same.
Yep, we're on the same page there. We're in one of the situations where it's very easy for people to look back after the fact and be like, oh, they didn't like Kevin Durant. They didn't like James Harden. But what we're talking about is that their price tags are up because they've been playing, in Durant's case, without Steph Curry. And in that situation, he has a 38% usage rate. Over those games where Curry was out, he had a 38% usage rate, a 30% assist percentage. With Curry this year, he has a 28% usage rate and about a 25% assist percentage. So you're talking about him going from averaging 1.5 to 1.6 fantasy points per minute to 1.3 to 1.4. Sure, he still has a ceiling. He's Kevin Durant. He's really good at basketball, and it's not a bad matchup at all against the Hawks. But we're talking in terms of probabilities and where we can find value, and him still being at a relatively expensive price tag because of where he was at without Curry means that he comes in as a less than stellar value, and you're just hoping that he has one of those games where he makes all of his shots.
Exactly. I mean, the usage with and without Curry on the court is dramatic. Like, and it's not to say like Kevin Durant, as you just pointed out, it's not to say that Kevin Durant can't be really good with Curry on the court. It's what it is saying, however, is that Kevin Durant without Curry on the court is a damn monster. Like the guy's matchup proof, but with Curry, he doesn't need to do all of that. It's just that simple. He doesn't need to produce with monster usage, play 40 plus minutes. Like this season, he's played 376 minutes with Curry on the court. He has a 27% usage rate, a 25% assist rate, and 1.33 fantasy points per minute. Now, I'm not including Draymond Green here. Just giving you an example. But 27% usage, Adam, 25% assist rate. Okay, both of them with Kevin Durant, with the big minutes he gets, no issue. You can survive with that. But also, Kevin Durant's price will come down the longer Stephen Curry stays healthy. Because Kevin Durant with Curry off the court has a 38.5% usage rate, 31% assist rate, and 1.55 fantasy points per minute. You mentioned the per minute production. You're talking about a usage rate, though, that comes down this season, and he's played 485 minutes without 375 with, or something close to that. I can't remember the last number. But even if you went back to last year, you'd see similar splits. You're talking about a 10, 11% drop in usage when Curry comes back on the court. That's dramatic.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you're just trying to like contextualize that, think about yourself playing like a basketball game and assume you're not, the most selfish person in the world, and you like, you can be as good at basketball as you think you are, but when you're out there and you just take all these threes, and then suddenly there's a guy next to you that is like 20% better at shooting threes than you are, and you're equally open. You're just giving this guy the ball if you're trying to actually win games, and that's kind of the issue with Durant at a really expensive price point when Curry's out there.
Okay, I agree, and I like the analogy there. A little wine will get you thinking about those analogies,
yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
All right, let's. Anyway, you know what? We talked about Kyle. We talked about not wanting to play Durant. If we'll keep this one quick. If Kyle Lowry's out, are you paying 9.7 for Kawhi Leonard?
It's the only way I'm playing Kawhi Leonard at that price.
Of course, but that's what I'm saying, because there's no way we're paying this. We're not playing the Noah Syndergaard of the NBA with Kyle Lowry in at that price. But with him out, 9,700 against Denver, a pretty good Denver team, it does get kind of appealing. We don't have a line on this game for obvious reasons, but I expect to see a decent amount of scoring here. Both teams play decent defense, but 9,700, is that fair enough for you if Lowry's out?
I think it's a little high. Like, I'd rather play Paul George for 8,500 against the Pistons than Kawhi for 97, assuming Lowry's in.
I don't think that's a crazy take at all. We lost minutes for Paul George. We both liked him a good amount on Friday, and the minutes didn't help. He averaged, he didn't have a huge game, but it was 1.21 fantasy points per minute. If he played his regular, 37 minutes per game, you're getting 45 fantasy points at a mid 8K price point. Similar thing tonight. 8,500. If this game stays close, and as I mentioned earlier, 1 point spread here, I think it will. Forget about the defenses, just factor in, or just think about the minutes, because Paul George has proven, regardless of matchup, that he's very capable of giving you quality numbers, even with Westbrook on the court when he's getting big run. 1.34 fantasy points per minute this year, Adam. He plays 38 minutes in this game. You're getting upwards of 48, 50 fantasy points. At least I would expect that. And if he doesn't have a great game, you're still crossing 42, 45, 8,500. That's really not a bad price at a pretty weak position.
Right. And Paul George, honestly, is a guy that I tend to write off, just kind of.
Me too.
And I think it's actually an issue. If you just look at what he's done since Russell Westbrook came back, he's still sitting there around 26, 27, 28% usage.
And very consistent too.
Right. And he plays huge minutes. He's, as long as sites are factoring in Russell Westbrook being back into his price tag, which I think that DraftKings is at $8,500
for sure,
then that's all that you really should be concerned about. You shouldn't be concerned about Westbrook being back affecting George unless sites are not dropping his price. And he was, honestly, when Westbrook was out, he was never expensive enough anyway. So I think that he's still a very reasonable option.
So do I. And if he's already playing the 17th most minutes per game, I pretty much could guarantee you that if you filtered it by games, that were decided by 10 or fewer points, that George is probably top 10 or up there with everybody else. Because in competitive games, I mean, just look, 40 minutes against Denver, 37 against Charlotte, 37 against Sacramento, 40 minutes against Phoenix, 36 against Phoenix again, 38 against Dallas. In these close games that are close up until the fourth quarter, he's getting a ton of run. So I like that too. Anything else from small forward that we haven't touched on yet? Taurean Prince is 4,800. That's always exciting.
I knew you would thw him out there.
I have to. Every time his price drops, I have to mention him.
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. His usage is just plummeting, which is
it's bad, yeah.
Scary to me. But
so is his price, just to throw it out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the price is nice. I had him in one of my better lineups on DraftKings the other day, and I watched the game, and he had a decent game for his price tag, but it's just really frustrating because he should be so much better than he is. I still think that if I have Prince, I would like to have someone from Golden State, because if Prince actually has one of those games where he goes out there and lights it up and suddenly you got 45 fantasy points from Taurean Prince, it's probably a game that is competitive into the fourth quarter, which means it's probably a game that you would like to have one of Durant, Thompson, or Curry on your team.
What about Jeff Green with Otto Porter ruled out? He's 3,800.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So Porter has been starting at the 4, depending on what their lineup is. Sometimes you saw Oubre out there. Sometimes you saw last game. Porter started at the 3. Green started at the 4. Oubre went back to the bench. We don't know what will happen here, but Green is either going to be in the starting lineup or he's going to play a bunch of minutes off the bench. There's just not really any way around that. Porter's playing 30 to 34 minutes. We've already seen the Wizards going small. The Knicks aren't a team where I expect them, caveat here being that Scott Brooks defies logic very frequently, but putting it nicely as a Wizards fan. But I don't think that they need to play Thomas Bryant and Jan Mahinmi in this game because, sure, you have Enes Kanter as a dominant offensive center, but behind him you have Mitchell Robinson, maybe you have Noah Vonleh, not guys that you need to bring in another traditional center to defend,
right?
Like Joel Embiid with the Sixers. So I'm assuming that doesn't happen. And if that doesn't happen, you're talking about Markieff Morris playing all of his minutes at the 5, which means that you're very, very thin at the 4, and then pushing down the line to the 3. Like you're going to have Satoransky, Rivers potentially picking up minutes there. So long story short, it's just that Jeff Green should get a bunch of minutes. Jeff Green is a good point per minute producer when he plays. He's actually been pretty impressive this season in particular. So I do like him.
I almost like him more off the bench, honestly, because
I would prefer he come off the bench. Yeah.
Most of his production from a per minute standpoint, the quality per minute, like when you're seeing these better games, it's off the bench. It might be when someone gets hurt or whatever, and he gets some extra run with the starters, but that's just because he's playing more minutes, more opportunity to produce. But like if I could say, yeah, Green's going to give me 27, 28 minutes off the bench, I'd probably take that over 30, 31 in the starting lineup, just because I think he's going to see quite a bit more usage with that second unit playing 10 to 13 minutes per game with at least Wall off the court. So to me, that does make a difference, but I'd consider him as a starter, of course, because he is so cheap.
Right, I agree. And also if he starts, like if we were to get a starting lineup of like Wall, Beal, Oubre, Green, and Bryant, it's concerning too because that means that there's a very good chance Markieff Morris does play the 4 and not the 5 for a lot of his minutes, which means that you now have Green competing with Keefe for minutes. Whereas if the Wizards go with something where Green's coming off the bench, you know that Keefe is sticking to the 5 and Green has those minutes at the 4.
All right, let's talk power forward. Anthony Davis, 11,500, but he has been a beast. He coming off a monster game last night on Sunday. He put up 36 and 19. That's right, 36, 19, 8 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. He shot 14 for 19, 6 of 6 from the charity stripe, 2 for 3 from beyond the arc, and had 4 turnovers. But a huge game. Now he is playing the second of a back-to-back. He played 37 minutes yesterday. I have no doubt that Anthony Davis will get perfectly normal run in a back-to-back situation. He does lead the entire league in minutes by a full minute. That's right, Anthony Davis by a full minute. But I also worry that his brittle bones can't stand up for 2 games in a row.
Right. And, obviously that's the concern with Anthony Davis. But it's one of my favorite matchups this season. Like, is athletic, good offensive centers against the Clippers, because you just look at who they have, and their options are Marcin Gortat. I don't care. Boban, good luck. Like Boban against Anthony Davis, that would be toast. Fun to watch.
Yeah,
right.
Well, we saw Boban against Embiid, and Embiid just ate him alive.
Right.
And Anthony Davis is even more athletic than Embiid is.
Right. And your third option is Montrezl Harrell, who's very productive from a fantasy standpoint, but the reason that Montrezl Harrell has not played consistent minutes until this season is that he struggles defensively, and he's an undersized small ball center good luck against Anthony Davis. There's nothing here that should slow down Anthony Davis outside of potentially Anthony Davis. So you talk about this whole top range. I'll take Davis over Durant. I'll take Davis over Harden. I'll take Davis over anyone else that we've talked about so far at this price point.
I'm with you. I'm definitely with you. I mean, obviously Curry's at a different salary. Maybe we get value. I'd play Davis with Curry. If you were to say like start your lineup with two guys above 9K on DraftKings, I think I would be starting it with Anthony Davis and Stephen Curry. What about you?
I'm with you there. And if you told me I could only pick one, I think it would be Davis.
Me too. But Curry's just so much cheaper. Like he's $2,000 cheaper. I'm not saying it would be easy to configure a lineup like that, but I also don't think it would be impossible. So that would be where I would start. Now, outside of Anthony Davis, you've got Blake Griffin against OKC. 8,800. That's pretty palatable price point, especially given Andre Drummond at 92. But both of them have come down a little bit. Andre Drummond's going to have his hands full with Steven Adams. That'll be a fun matchup to watch, by the way. But you've got those two going at it in Detroit. Blake Griffin going to. The thing is with Steven Adams. Let's break this down real quick. With Steven Adams likely seeing a whole lot of Andre Drummond. Do you stick Paul George on Blake? Because I don't know if Jeremy Grant is, he's a good chase down shot blocker and everything. But I mean, if you've ever watched the guy play, he's a pure hustle guy, but he's not very big. Like he's 210 pounds, man. He's not a big guy. Blake's 251. He's just going to body the hell out of him in a spot like this if they try and stick Jeremy Grant on him.
Right. I was going to say that I respect Jeremy Grant a lot.
So do I. But the size advantage means a lot to me here.
Right. And so if they didn't have a Paul George type guy, I would say, man, Blake might just, go to town here. Yep. But the fact is, Oklahoma City is they're a good overall defensive team. And part of the reason is that, you have Adams obviously at the 5, but you can mix and match. Like if they need to, George can defend Blake and Grant can go defend Reggie Bullock or anyone, it doesn't matter. Oklahoma City can match up here the best way they see fit. And I'm not one to, for DFS purposes, I really don't care that much about individual matchups. I care more about overall team defense, and even more than that, I care about usage rates and salary. But just talking about individual matchups here, even though Jeremy Grant is the one on paper that would match up with Blake, I just don't give that much of a boost to Blake because Oklahoma City can still switch it up and just run Paul George there if they need to.
Exactly. That's the thing. Now, I actually do still think Blake can put up big numbers here. But it's not crazy again. I expect Paul George to guard him, and here's why. You have to look past, you have to look past the individual matchup, but also you have to look at something else. You have Blake Griffin and you have Andre Drummond. Outside of that, this is not an offensively potent Detroit team. So it is a spot where, and again, I think we both respect Jeremy Grant as a defender, but the size to me, being 40 pounds underweight against Blake Griffin is not going to help. Plus, Grant can play very small. So I think when you look at a spot like this and you look at Detroit's starting lineup and you see that you've got Glenn Robinson, this is the last lineup they rolled out, Glenn Robinson at the 3, Reggie Bullock at the 2, and then Stanley Johnson playing as the first man off the bench. And it's very reasonable to think that, okay, let's put, the bigger, it's not that George is that much heavier than Grant. He's just big. He's just better suited. He's and stockier, you've seen Grant. He's just very skinny. I think you could just throw Grant on like a Robinson or a Stanley Johnson and let Paul George handle Blake Griffin.
Right. And to me, the bigger point, even without, sitting here trying to guess who defends them, if whoever is defending Blake is ineffective, they're going to probably switch to the other guy because there's everyone else on Detroit. It doesn't matter who defends them. So if they start with Jeremy Grant and Blake starts out well, you're probably going to see Paul George pretty quick. If Paul George starts on him and Blake does well, you're probably going to see Jeremy Grant pretty quick. The point is they have guys that can not stop Blake, but if we're just talking about for the sake of, likelihood of having a monster game, they have guys that can slow him down.
Exactly. And that's what it comes down to. With all that said, I still think 8,800 is a pretty fair price on Blake. And I like that if this game stays close, he's another guy that'll see upwards of 40 minutes. So I don't think Blake is a bad play. But what I do think is that you have to look at how this matchup should play out. And I don't think it'll be as easy for him as it might be on paper if you just say, okay, power forward matches up with power forward, so on and so forth.
Right.
All right. What else you got at power forward? I'll let you run with this. I'll give you a few names that we can touch on. Nikola Mirotic against the Clippers. He's 7,200. Tobias Harris that price is a bit rich for my blood. I'd probably just go up to Blake, honestly. Montrezl Harrell, 7,600. Julius Randle, 67. Danilo Gallinari, mentioned him here, 66. And then I guess I'll throw him into the mix too. Serge Ibaka's 5,500.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't even want to say unappealing because I like the guys. I mean, Julius Randle should smash on a per-minute basis in this spot, but his price tag is a little steep for his minutes. Montrezl Harrell should crush in his time on the floor, but you're talking about now, $7,600 on DraftKings for a guy that's going to play 30, maybe 32 minutes. They both could get there, but it's asking a lot. Serge Ibaka, I think, is the one that kind of is interesting, stands out to me. Like, we don't know if he'll start. We don't know if he'll start, but if he starts and plays 28 to 30 minutes here at 5,500, it's a tough matchup. But 5,500 is 5,500, and I think that he could perform pretty well. I think Markieff Morris is interesting. Like, he's only 5,900, and assuming he does not start, and again, like, I would prefer that Green not start. Like, I really hope the Wizards run out a lineup of Wall, Beal, Satoransky, Oubre, Bryant, and that basically confirms that we're getting Jeff Green playing a ton of minutes at the 4 and Markieff a ton of minutes at the 5. If we're getting a bunch of Keefe, yes, Mitchell Robinson's a good defender as the backup center, but Keefe's just so productive on a per-minute basis for his salary if he's going to play 34 minutes at center, with some of those minutes coming without John Wall on the floor, that I would like Keefe quite a bit.
That would be a small lineup, too. Very interesting to see what they come up with here. And, yeah, Ibaka, I do have some interest in Ibaka just because that price point is really cheap. You had mentioned last week that his usage has come down. However, he's played 35, 37, and 31 minutes over his last 3 games. I think this one stays close. If I get 35 minutes from Ibaka, 35 or 5,500, I'm all right with slightly decreasing usage if he's out there on the court for that amount of time. So it's a risk, but I don't have an issue with it. Yeah. So
also,
Ibaka, go ahead.
Noah Vonleh is going to wreck the Wizards.
All right. Fair enough. Yeah, I think it's very possible. No question. You all right with 5,300?
Very, very all right with 5,300 for Noah Vonleh here. All
right. His personal fouls, by the way, over his last 4 games, 4, 6, 4, 6. So it's really the thing with Vonleh. Same with Jaren Jackson. I mean, how many times have I said, play Jaren Jackson if you're not averse to risk and reap the benefits when he doesn't get in foul trouble and deal with it when he does. Well, Jaren Jackson, what was it? Was it Saturday? I'm sorry. I think it was, Saturday in that overtime game between maybe it was Friday. It was Friday between Memphis and the Brooklyn Nets. Yeah, double overtime. Jaren Jackson, no foul trouble, baby. This dude dropped 36 points on 13 for 22 shooting. Like, as a rookie, outside of the foul trouble, he's a stud.
Oh, yeah.
And Vonleh, obviously, I think future upside, I like Jaren Jackson a lot more. But Vonleh's been one of those guys that when he's not in foul trouble, he has a pretty high ceiling.
Right. And who on the Wizards is he fouling? Like, Kelly Oubre is not that guy. Right. Jeff Green's not that guy.
No, but he just fouls the foul like somebody.
Well, right. But if you're right, but if you're going to have the conversation about, like, Vonleh might get in foul trouble, this isn't the spot that I expect it. But it is a really bad rebounding team. It's a fast-paced team. It's a bad defensive team. Like, I don't know. Vonleh could. I think it's more likely Vonleh triple doubles here than that he
Then
disappoints.
fouls out.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. I like it. And you're right. 5,300 is not crazy in a spot like this. I will really just play anyone against the Wizards. The biggest thing is
Yeah.
blowouts with the Sixers.
Right.
But I don't see the Knicks blowing them out. So it's kind of a win-win there. All right. Let's round it out at center. It's been a long podcast already, but a good one. Karl Anthony Towns, 9K here against Houston in a home matchup. Cat has I get that since Butler's been going, he's had some monster games. Adam, he's also had some really disappointing efforts too. And not all of them have been in blowouts either. Like he's had some bad games and some really big games. It really feels like with Karl Anthony Towns, you're getting between 30 and 40 or between 60 and 70 right now.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to keep going back to him, especially.
So am I. He's too cheap.
His price tag, he's $9,000 on DraftKings. And
I'm just saying he's more volatile than you might think.
No, I agree with you. And like whenever I project him, he breaks my model, and I'm at the like whims of Karl Anthony Towns. But before we like get too upset about his game logs, yes, he sucked against Boston. He sucked against Memphis. You know, he had 45 there. He sucked against Portland. But also he has bad games against Chicago where he was good against Chicago, sorry. Bad game against Brooklyn, he had 5 fouls. Bad game against Denver, he had 4 fouls. Played 28 minutes in those games. 28 minutes against the Spurs in the blowout. So not all of his bad games have been because he's been bad. And now you have the spot against Houston where, yeah, it's a slower Houston team, but since Butler was traded, you're still talking about around the 28% usage rate for Cat. Granted, only 22% last game, 24% the game before that. So it's trending down, but still just a lot of upside for Cat.
There is a lot of upside for him. Is there any upside in guys like, and obviously there is, but I mean in this matchup at their price points, Andre Drummond, 9,200. I'll be honest. I love Drummond. He's got monster upside, but I do worry about Steven Adams. I have an immense amount of respect for Steven Adams' defense. I really do. Like I just think he's a warrior out there. He's the type of guy that can get in Drummond's head, even if he's not scoring. So you got Drummond at 92. You've got, ready for this, Clint Capella at 8,600. I never thought I'd see that day, but it's here. And here's the crazy one, Adam. Nikola Jokic at 8,200.
So I knew there was someone in this Houston-Minnesota matchup that had been really good. I thought it was Cat, but it was Capella on a per-minute basis. If you go back and just look at what he's done in this spot, and not that that's the end-all be-all, but with centers, I'm more willing to look at it than, at other positions. I don't really care how guys have done in previous matchups. But this is, we're talking about when Capella was playing way less minutes than he is this season. You're talking about 49.75 fantasy points in 33, 48.75 in 32, a couple of bad games in 27 and 28 minutes, but 50 in 34, 41 in 31, 47 in 31. He's actually crushed this matchup before, and it's a spot where I would expect him to do well. The minutes he's playing are really, really nice. The only issue is, like you said, it's a tough matchup for Nikola Jokic against Toronto. There's no question about that. Good defensive team. I like Jokic in fast-paced spots where he's playing weaker defenses because he not only rebounds well and scores, but he also is an excellent passer. But he's coming off a string of bad games. His price tag's plummeting. You should get around 32 minutes here, maybe 33, 34. The price tag's just too low for the upside that Jokic offers. So I think that Capella, I guess the best way to put it would be Capella probably beats Jokic here over 50% of the time. But again, obviously we clearly don't have ownership projections yet. If they're anywhere close to similar, if Capella is a lot more owned than Jokic, I would pretty quickly switch to Jokic.
I don't think he will be at that price. I don't think he will be at that price.
I would take whichever of the two is lower owned.
Yeah, I'm fair. I'm fine with that. Or at least whoever we think is going to be lower owned.
Right.
Just quickly, because I don't want to go on forever here, but I have some thoughts on it. I want to know what your thoughts are. Jokic has played 23, 27, 23, 32 minutes over his last four. Two were back-to-backs. One was a blowout, and then the other one was actually not even close until the end, and he got in some foul trouble. But we've seen his minutes kind of all over the place, and his production. Like, he has not – like, his floor has been pretty low, which is why I think this price tag against the Raptors is actually pretty reasonable. Do you think it's just a bad stretch of games? Because I think that's what it comes down to for me. Some bad matchups, some blowouts, some foul trouble. I think that's, to me, what I'm seeing here. I think Jokic is perfectly fine. He's still taking shots. Do you see anything that I'm missing?
No, I agree with you. The back-to-backs I kind of write off because I think we had talked about it on a deeper dive, but the Nuggets had not played a back-to-back in a really long time, from like October 30th and November 1st until November 23rd and 24th. But during the back-to-backs, the end of October, Mike Malone had talked about not wanting to run Jokic out there a ton of minutes in both games. And then you kind of saw a blowout with 23 minutes, but also a sort of close game with 27. And so I don't think that was surprising. You got 23 minutes in a blowout against the Lakers, 32 in a close game against Portland. I think that you can continue projecting him for 32 to 34 minutes. And like you said, the shots are still there. The usage is there. There's no reason to think he's like decided he doesn't need to shoot or something. So I think it's just kind of a string of bad games that's lowered his price. And that's when I love jumping on guys in tournaments, regardless of matchup.
Yep, I'm with you. Yeah, I also think that we probably, as much as I'm not huge on it, I think we probably have to consider Tristan Thompson. I don't like playing Tristan Thompson too often because the truth is Thompson does have a low floor still. Say what you want, he does. Like, Tristan Thompson can disappear at times because the thing about Thompson is he will go games where he just doesn't shoot. And actually, 51% shooting for a center is not all that spectacular. But there are a few things about Tristan Thompson that you really have to like. Now, first of all, 51% field goal shooting this year. True shooting is probably I don't know. Let's see, where is it? True shooting is 54%. He's 63% free throw shooter. But he doesn't get to the line all that frequently. The thing about Tristan Thompson that has clearly stood out, and obviously you've noticed this as well, his rebounding has just shot through the ceiling, man. I mean, you're getting monster rebound performance after monster rebound performance. I mean, he's actually flashing potential 2020 upside, which is insane for a guy that for so many years we knew as just defensive, grab some offensive rebounds. Maybe you'll be able to put them back, but probably not. I mean, his touch around the rim certainly isn't as bad as Bam Adebayo, but it's also not spectacular either. So I just looking at this potential rebounds per game over his last 10 games, Tristan Thompson, ready, is third in the league behind Andre Drummond and Joel Embiid. Yes, that stands out to me.
Yeah, and on top of that, the minutes. Now, granted, we're waiting to see who's in there for Cleveland. You had Nwaba and Sam Decker both questionable pretty deep into the day before Cleveland's last game. If those guys come back, it runs the risk of you knocking Thompson down to like 34 minutes. But so far, he's playing 40 minutes in competitive games. And now you have this matchup against Brooklyn where, despite being one of the slower teams in the league, like in the 15 to 20, I think they might even be worse than 20th in pace this year, they're allowing in like the top 5 or 6 in rebounds per game, not factoring in pace, just rebounds per game.
Right. They're 24th in pace, by the way.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so one of the slower teams in the league is still one of the worst rebounding teams without adjusting for pace. That's how bad they are. Jared Allen as a defender, the guy's long. He's good. He's going to be better. Doesn't matter for Tristan Thompson. This guy gets rebounds, he dunks the ball. I don't care about Jared Allen defense or anything like that. This team's still not rebounding. Tristan Thompson still, you might look and say, oh, man, Tristan Thompson, 6,500. Man, I don't think I can go there. Completely different Tristan Thompson. Great matchup. Scale it back a bit if we get, Nwaba, Decker, both or something in. But if we're assuming he's going to play 40 minutes if this game's competitive, he should absolutely wreck this front court.
I love it. And I love that you pointed out the whole Jared Allen thing because I've been talking about this a lot. Jared Allen's defense really is not that bad. But he's more so like a better defender, just protecting the rim in terms of helping the team, not so much as a one-on-one guy. That
Right.
really doesn't concern me that much. They've done a better job of rim protection this season, no question. The Brooklyn Nets were one of the worst last year, one of the worst the year before. Brook Lopez doesn't really help the cause. But this year, Brooklyn in rim protection ranks fourth best in the league. Only the Sixers with, of course, Joel Embiid, the Lakers, who JaVale McGee swats everything, and Miami Heat with Whiteside are better than them this year. And Jared Allen's had a lot to do with that. So a lot of respect. However, you pointed a few really important things out. The rebounding, even though they're playing at such a slow pace, and against centers this year, they're allowing, I think, the fifth most to opposing big men. They're also allowing the fourth most points to the position. You name it, everything. They have really struggled against opposing centers. They're also allowing the fourth most free throw attempts, and in terms of efficiency to the position, the third highest. So it's a good spot for Tristan Thompson. I like it quite a bit. I think you could see like an 18-16 game here. I really do. And at that price point, I'd be very happy with it. Now, I have to ask you about, because I mentioned the other day that I thought John Collins, and we had so many questions on him. John Collins at 6K, I just thought was too expensive. Yes, he's a 1 fantasy point per minute guy for his career. But if you're playing 30 minutes, 31 minutes at 6K, it's not that great, right? It's around 30, 31 fantasy points. Not to say he can't have bigger games, but now he's down to 5,300 against a Golden State team that's still without Draymond Green. And then recently lost, who was it? It was Damian Jones to the torn pec muscle. So they're going to have like Kevin Looney and Jonas Jerebko out there occupying the 5. It's not a great front court defense right now at all for this team. Now, granted, he's playing a lot of small forward, but his price is down to 5,300. The only concern is he's only center eligible. But I still think at that price there's some upside.
Right, I agree. There's plenty of upside for him here in this spot. He's playing, around 32 minutes if this game's close, and he's a point per minute guy, like you said. I think that he still has power forward on FanDuel, right? I haven't pulled it up, but I assume he does.
I'll pull it up now, but you would definitely think so.
Yeah.
I don't see why he wouldn't be. He's been playing power forward.
Right. Last I looked, they had jacked his price up, but he was still power forward. I would rather play him at power forward on this slate if I can, if I'm going to choose between the two sites.
He is power forward, but he's 7,100.
Right. So completely different price tag.
Crazy.
So 5,300 at center, I think is fair. So I guess the best way to approach it is to look at, who's around him. I would rather play John Collins than Jared Allen in his matchup against, Tristan Thompson. I would rather play Noah Vonleh than John Collins against the Wizards. Larry Nance against Brooklyn, I'd rather play Collins because, assuming that if we assume that Cleveland starts the same lineup as last time where Nance is no longer the starting 4 and he's just kind of stuck on the bench. The thing that gets interesting on DraftKings where, Collins is clearly underpriced to 5,300 is I know that Jonas Valanciunas does not play a lot of minutes, but you're talking about a 20% discount between John Collins and Jonas Valanciunas. 4,400 for Valanciunas is just kind of a really, really nice price tag.
I think this is probably the end of the road for us. It's been a nice show, a long one, but we will close it out here. I'll ask you any value at center before we close it out. Anyone that we haven't talked about yet at any position before we say goodbye for the morning.
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, that will do it for us. This is the DFS Early Bird. Thanks as always for hanging out with us this morning. We'll catch you back here on the next edition, bright and early, Tuesday morning.